First of all, I'm Dan Gable, and Olympic wrestling champion. And the question really is, how does a kid get into the sport of wrestling or any sport and really proceed ahead to get real good and want to win the Olympics? Well, here's how it starts out. You start out as a kid. You want to get into different sporting events, different things, and you kind of evaluate which ones that you like, which ones that you're better at, and at the same time, even beyond the sport, you learn how to compete. Well, I was lucky. I started at the YMCA when I was 4, and I was doing swimming, wrestling, basketball. I was doing all kinds of sports there, but mostly they taught me about faith. They taught me about how to compete. They taught me about good sportsmanship. They did a lot of good things for me between the ages of 4 to 12. And those are the years that I was playing summer baseball. I was playing football, some kind of tackle football just on the playground. I was doing some wrestling. Definitely doing a lot of swimming. That was my first sport that I competed at, was swimming. But I learned how to compete because people were giving me words of advice and telling me things, and I believed in that. And because I believed in that, when the whistle blew or the gun went off to start a swim race, when it was in competition, I always did better in competition than I did in practice, even though I did okay in practice, because it was like the butterflies. It was time to perform, and I wasn't like scared because I learned how to compete. When you are nervous, scared, your times will be slower than when you're nervous high. So I learned to compete at an early age, which gave me an advantage over a lot of people. And especially when you get involved in a sport later that you find out which is your best sport, because after maybe 7th or 8th or 9th grade, after playing multi-sports, I saw that wrestling was my easiest sport. So the one that I was going to carry me on through college, and I didn't realize at the time it was going to be my profession. But because of my size, I eliminated some of the other sports that I still would have competed at the beginning level. So basically, by the time I was a sophomore, which is the first year of high school at that particular time, all the other sports went down the tube from a standpoint of competing, and I just concentrated on wrestling because I knew that was a sport for me after several years of competing in many sports, because that was the one I enjoyed the most, and it was the one I was most talented at. So basically, I started focusing more on that, and I didn't trust myself because I'm a sophomore and I wasn't under a coach before. So it's football season, so what do? Well, I reported to football practice. They made me warm up with the football team, and then I went in to the wrestling mats that a coach would lay out on the gym balcony. So you got to have some cooperation and some help, and you had some other players that were other wrestlers that were not competing in track or football. And it was because I was only a 95-pounder that I decided to stay out of football and out of baseball. Not so much out of baseball for the size, but by the time I learned how to be able to go to practice by myself and not depend on a coach, then I trusted myself not to have to go out for baseball or to be in something that's organized that's going to help you more for the future. So basically it gave me a full commitment. Now, when I was a kid, they didn't have Now, when I was a kid, they didn't have freestyle wrestling for kids, so that wasn't a consideration. But nowadays, if wrestling is your thing and you want to have 2 times where you can compete in wrestling, well, then you go for the regular wrestling season and then the freestyle wrestling season or the Greco season. So, that's something that can also help you determine whether that's your sport or not. And it can actually help you be a better wrestling athlete. So that's basically it. Now, once I determined where I was going to go to college, and you need to determine where you're going to go to college so that it can help you keep continuing to develop. Because as a kid, I always wanted to be an Olympic champion, and that wasn't really reasonable at first. But once you started realizing you're pretty good in something, it does become more reasonable. But you got to start thinking about it. You got to start winning that Olympic championship when you're a kid. And even though you're not really doing it, it's in your mind. You're doing it in your basement. You're doing it as you're wrestling somebody else, as you're wrestling, shadow wrestling, whatever. So that imagination is real key for success, for a level of high development. Well, once you go to college, you pick a good college, you pick a good coach, you pick good surroundings. You have to up your mentality. If you don't up your mentality at every level, then you stay the same. So as good as you are at that other level, you'll stay just like you are at that next level, unless you up your mentality and go to a new level of dedication and skill. So after junior high, I upped my mentality. After high school, I upped my mentality. After college, I upped my mentality. And by that I mean discipline, and became more dedicated. So then that's the highest level, the Olympic effort. And so basically the year of the Olympic Games, my job was basically training for the sport of wrestling. And before that, I always had summer jobs, gone to school, but by that time, basically full-time, almost training for the sport. But before that, it couldn't be just full-time. It had to be, working, school, other things that are really beneficial for your overall development. But once you get to that highest level, you can focus pretty much on that, as long as you know how to recover every day. Recovery is real crucial to get you ready for the next day. And that's analyzing, that's recovering your body, your mind, and pretty much if you can do all what I just said, you got a good shot at winning the Olympic Games.
Thanks, Dan. What was your most memorable moment in wrestling history?
Hopefully it's yet to happen, but coaching individual champions and coaching kids that went on in life and are doing very well. That's more memorable than me being a champion, because I knew I was going to win.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Yes.
What was the question?
What do you hope for the future of wrestling in the United States?
What do I hope for the future of wrestling in the United States? Real simple. We are a sport that's not at the highest level possible. We got football above us, we got basketball above us, not above my thoughts, but in terms of society, in terms of how the world looks at sports competing. So the bottom line is I would like to see it go to a higher level. I'd like to see it become more involved in media exposed to people. I'd like to see more kids get into it. I'd like to see more D1 institutions having wrestling. So the bottom line is we need to get structured better than we are right now. So that structure, with all the main people that are involved in it, need to cooperate, work together, and come up with a great structure that we are flowing so well that we move up the chain of sports, so we are in one of those high-level sports. That's what I'd love to see.
What do you think about the idea of a series about wrestling?
Well, I think if we are, I think you can do anything that's good for the sport. Like whatever you can do to get it more out there to people. I think if you have a good series of wrestling, that'd be great. But I think the bottom line, you got to take the people that are in charge, and you got to create another group that is in charge of that group to be able to get them to cooperate and work together on a lot of issues. And so any issues that we have out there become what I call non-issues. And I know things will come up, but without working together, we're not going to get to that higher stage. We're just going to level off, stay where we're at. One of the problems, we're a hard-working sport. We're a combative sport. And unless we are going to do some things together as a group of people in the world, we're too difficult. So we're just gonna stay where we're at, and we're not gonna go up. So the world needs good, hard-working people, and we can be a sport that unite the world. But at the same time, not the way that the direction is heading right now. So we need some change.
I appreciate that. I've noticed a lot. It's a problem we have in Montana is that you fight each other so much that you don't want to be.
You want to fight. You want to fight each other only when you're wrestling on the mat in competition. When you have to do something for the sport, you got to turn your head and say, "Hey, I got to do it for the sport." It's just a matter of, if you want to go to another level in our sport, we got to cooperate together more. No matter what, no matter how competitive you are, we're only going to be so competitive because of our not being one of the major sports right now.